Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Axis Blockbusters Pod. Welcome to episode 15, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe it's episode 15. Welcome back to the podcast. It's the weekly podcast on the Axis Blockbusters YouTube channel, where I talk about basically anything and everything that has been going on in the past week in relation to movies, in relation to blockbusters, television shows, things like that. It's been pretty insane the past couple weeks, huh? Today's episode will be pretty light, because, there's some movie news going around, and there's some things that I would be interested to talk about. But this week I decided, let's just keep it simple. Let's talk about 3 pieces of content that I've seen over the past week that I wanted to talk about. But there are other pieces of content that are just flying towards us at just rapid volumes, and it's actually really exciting. It's a really exciting time. Obviously we'll talk about the 3 projects today: Lightyear, Miss Marvel, and Obi-Wan. But also, the Umbrella Academy has dropped. Doctor Strange dropped into Disney Plus, which we've already seen. We've talked about on the podcast and on this YouTube channel. But also, Umbrella Academy, The Boys is going on. Stranger Things Volume 2, Season 4 is coming out. And obviously Thor: Love and Thunder. So, heading right into the middle of July. I think July, maybe we'll get a little bit of a lull. Maybe Comic-Con will have some more fun stuff. But it is kind of crazy right now, the amount of things to watch. And so, over the next couple of weeks, if you guys want to see reviews of any of those shows or movies in particular, let me know in the comments down below. Speaking of, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the Axis Blockbusters channel, what are you guys doing? Make sure to subscribe, join the Axis Blockbusters crew. And we'll be doing these podcasts for the foreseeable future, but I am working very hard on some new content that will be coming out soon, a new rewatch series perhaps. Remains to be seen. I'm hoping to announce what that is in the relative near future. We'll have to see about that, obviously. There's not a lot of other housekeeping items to take care of this week. I just want to talk about some things that I saw and what I thought about them. So, without further ado, again, make sure to subscribe, leave a like. Give a rating on the Apple Podcast, Spotify platform, if you will. The podcast is available there. And let's get into it, shall we? So the first thing that I saw this past week was Lightyear. And apologies for the art of Lightyear, but I just thought it was a really, really cool picture, and I wanted to use it as kind of the title card here. But yeah, Disney and Pixar's Lightyear, which I believe... and I might be misremembering this again, pandemic, it's been really hazy, but I do believe that this is the first theatrically released Pixar film since Onward, and I remember personally watching Onward at home on Disney Plus, but I also do remember that, I believe I remember that it also released in theaters at the same time. That was March of 2020, right around when the pandemic started, so I believe that's what happened, but I could be wrong. Anyways, first Pixar movie to be released theatrically in quite a while. And, all of the other ones that I've seen them all, Turning Red, Luca, Soul. Soul was quite excellent, I think. Maybe not S tier, but very, very excellent. I will have to be updating my Pixar tier list video at some point with all the new releases. But I think that Soul was quite excellent. I was a big fan of, I enjoyed Luca. For what it was just a short little fun movie, coming of age kind of movie. And Turning Red, well, I understand why a lot of people really gravitated towards it. I actually wasn't the biggest fan of the movie. I think just kind of the style and sort of the tone, not the style. The style was really wonderful, just to see. Again, each Pixar film, while being all 3D animated, have a very different stylistic sensibility. I just think sort of the tone of the movie is generally not something that I am gravitated towards, but I was able to very much appreciate what they were going for, and I ended up having a good time watching the movie. So there was that. But Lightyear, this is a sci-fi sort of epic, right? It's actually one of the first sci-fi action films, I think, if not the first, that Pixar has done. Obviously, Incredibles is also sci-fi-ish, but and also, full spoilers ahead, by the way, if that wasn't clear. You guys already know all this stuff, by the way, but being based on the toy Buzz Lightyear, and then coming to realize that this is actually the movie that inspired the toy in the Toy Story franchise, which is actually really clever. All kind of, it was really intriguing, and obviously, of course, our favorite Captain America, Chris Evans was cast as Buzz Lightyear, and that is, I personally, once I heard the casting, was like, yeah, I didn't think about that at first, but if you're not going to get Tim Allen back, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but Chris Evans, he has the gravitas, he has the voice, I think he has the mannerisms, even like you can see him as even a live action Buzz Lightyear even. And so when he was cast, I was actually pretty excited about it. And we can jump right into it, actually. I thought Chris Evans did a fantastic job playing the character of Buzz Lightyear. I think that he gave the stoicness, the right amount of emotionality. I think that, it's interesting because you see in the picture, he's at the premiere of Knives Out. Knives Out is a movie where he plays a villainous character. And I think he does a good job, and it might not have anything to do with his acting ability, honestly. I think he's a really good actor, but, he having played Captain America for a decade, right? And then now coming in and playing another very stoic hero character, who obviously both Captain America and Buzz Lightyear have flaws and things like that, but they are heroes. And it's hard to kind of break him out of that archetype a little bit. I think Knives Out did a good job of getting us started on that direction, if he so chooses. Because obviously, who's to complain if you're known for being Captain America for your entire life? I don't think Chris Evans is complaining at all. So I think that, while this role doesn't offer Chris Evans sort of the versatility that a Knives Out role did as a Hugh Ransom, is that his name? Or Hugh Ransom, I'm forgetting the last name of that family. Anyways, that's going to bother me now. But yeah, I think that this role was really built for him, in a sense that it offers him basically the same kind of characteristics as Captain America, and I think he did a great job. Now, another thing that I was, wondering about is how they were going to sort of tie it together with the Toy Story franchise, and I think that it does it in a very clever way. We can talk about eventually Zurg, and that's obviously a big part of how this ties in together with the Toy Story franchise, but I think that there are a couple questions you need to answer. Well, you need to sort of address, at least. First of all, the mannerisms, which I think are spot on. I think that it's very clear to see that this character on the left here, the Buzz Lightyear in the movie, and the character on the right, Buzz Lightyear the toy who came to life, are one and the same. Coming from the same sort of branch. And I think it's very clever that, you have this idea of a different actor voicing the character in the toy, because that's often what happens, right? It's not Chris Hemsworth is not voicing every single, talking Thor doll, for example. And so I think that that's awesome. I think that worked really well. The other thing that we will address in just a second is obviously the I Am Your Father thing from Toy Story 2 with Zurg. And I think that it's, that was really the big question that I had going in. It's like, okay, how are they going to sort of address that in the movie? It inspired the toys to think that Zurg was Buzz's father, and I think that was addressed very cleverly. And so that was good. Other little things like, we can get a better picture here. Like the suit obviously looks great. Obviously the rendering, if you can tell from here to here, or even just, left and right, the rendering is obviously incredibly more advanced in 2022 than it was in 1999, 1997, around then. But still, you can tell that it's the same suit. You can tell it's the same character, obviously with the head covering and the dome. And I even like the little wing thing at the end when he's flying off in space and he gets the wings. I think that that's cool. It's a very nice little touch. Those are things that don't have to be there. I think about a movie like Solo, a Star Wars story, for example. It's it's not necessary that we know where the dice come from, but it's there. And honestly, I think that Solo kind of emphasized those things too much. Like, hey, this is where he got his last name. This is where he got his dice. And those are, things that you can kind of sprinkle in along the way, like Lightyear does. But those are not necessarily things that you need to make the focus of the entire movie. And so I was really glad that, these things are just kind of taken for granted. This is the character. This is who he is. And that was really awesome. Now, the relationship, I don't have pictured here the other members of the crew. And we can talk about, well, here, let's go back to here, actually. I'm just seeing Buzz doing the finger touching, the index finger touch, that he did with Commander Hawthorne. Alicia, I believe, the grandmother of Izzy. I don't know if this is Izzy in the picture, if this is Alicia, but we can use this as a good segue to talk about the film as a whole, and say that for the first 30 minutes of the movie, I thought that this would be an S tier Pixar movie. I was floored by this movie. It had all of the right Pixar isms, if you will, but in a good way, you know. And I think that it brought the emotion, it brought the laughs, it brought the heart that it needed to. And honestly, that montage of when he's trying to go make the jump and go to hyperspeed, and um, everyone's getting old around him is just, it's Pixar, you know. It reminded me of the first 10 minutes of Up, that montage of growing old and life passing you by. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, you know, that scene when he sees the hologram or recording of Alicia Hawthorne, if I believe her name is Alicia, of Commander Hawthorne, I'm just gonna say, got me emotional. And that was in the first 20-ish minutes of the movie and 30 minutes of the movie. And I at that point I was like, wow, this is a really good Pixar movie. And it was deep too. It's these questions. I don't know if you've seen the movie Arrival, or actually read the short story that it's based on, called the book is called the story of your life, by an author named Ted Chiang. It's a really wonderful short story. I would recommend reading it if you haven't, and if you enjoy the movie Arrival and didn't know it was based on a short story. But that, you know, mildly spoil some of the movie and the book, it's sort of about this idea of, if you know what's going to happen, do you still allow it to happen anyways? You know, even if it's bad, like, what about all the good that comes along with it? And it's not exactly the same. Obviously, there's some Interstellar mixed in here as well in this movie. But it's this idea of, you know, you feel this obligation to try to save these people that you put them in the perilous situation to begin with, but you're also watching life pass you by, and you're not really living the life that you could be, you know, that Commander Hawthorne was living, and Buzz just missed out on. And that stuff is beautiful. That stuff is really beautiful. Now, I will say, the movie's about an hour 45. So the first 30 to 40-ish minutes, I was completely hooked. Like, I thought this movie was fantastic. The next hour of the movie, you know, the rest of the movie, I thought was fine. Was good. It was a rather fun, inconsequential space movie with some interesting things sprinkled here and there, like with Zurg and all that sort of stuff, and it was fine. I don't have pictured here Taika Waititi's character and the other Pearl Space Ranger, who was really funny. They were both both very funny. I just have Izzy here. Or no, is this Alicia? I don't quite I don't know what scene this is from. I believe this is Izzy, but anyways, so all that to say is that the crew here, the crew didn't really make an impact on me, is what I will say. And that's why I'm having a hard time remembering, you know, I don't even remember the names of Taika Waititi's character or the parole officer. Izzy herself as a character didn't really make an imprint on me. I think that the crew themselves, they were not as memorable as I'd like it to be, because I think that the second part of the movie is really based on this idea of comradeship and Buzz trying to, you know, the rookie thing at the beginning, and now Buzz trying to figure out who he is and as a leader. And I think that the second part of this movie, diving into the sci-fi stuff, and hey, it's a band of misfits, it was classic sci-fi, it was classic movie, and there was nothing unremarkable about it, but there was also nothing remarkable about it either. And I think that this part of the movie was just me kind of sitting back in the theater and going, yeah, this is fine. This is a fun movie. Now, obviously, if you've seen the movie, this character, Socks, steals the entire movie. He is awesome. I just can't get enough of this character. You know, this is how, I mean, toys galore, obviously, but I think earned in a sense, right? It's not like Star Wars where sometimes they just put in a droid there just to sell a toy, or like, you know, porgs or whatever. This character has a pivotal role in the movie, has a really big heart, I think, ironically, for sort of an android cat and a robot cat, and can't say enough good things about this character. Finally, to wrap up this review, I wanted to talk about Zurg, obviously, because Zurg is the antagonist of the film. And going straight to the twist, I think that it's a really clever way to tie in Toy Story 2 with the I Am Your Father thing. I was wondering, obviously, the whole movie, once Zurg was announced, and once I saw Zurg in the trailer, and once I saw Zurg in the movie, I was like, okay, what's going on here? Is Zurg just a robot? Obviously, with the "I am your father" implication is that there's a human in there, and I love how when the costume first opens up and it's this older man, and you kind of and Buzz says "Dad," and you kind of go, "Oh, is that his actual father?" That would make sense, right? And then the older version says not quite, and you go into this explanation of this is a Buzz in the future who went back in time, and I guess this is an instance where you can meet your older self in this kind of time travel or whatever they're deciding it is. I don't know. I don't honestly see my video on X-Men Days of Future Past and Avengers Endgame. The simpler the time travel is, often the better in movies and entertainment. But whatever, it's fine. But yeah, I thought that the way that they portrayed this, where this is a Buzz who wants to complete the mission, and the current Buzz, present Buzz, not old Buzz, is like, no, there are more important things. I thought that was all really good. The action scenes were great. Obviously, it's 2022 Pixar. Look at this character. Look at the rendering. Obviously, I don't have a picture of the Toy Story version of Zurg, but it's obviously. I mean, we can go back to here. It's like it's night and day, right? The shadows and the detail and all that sort of stuff. Again, 1990s, late 1990s. It was revolutionary. To say the least. So, yeah, those were my overall thoughts on Pixar's Lightyear. I think that the first 30 minutes of the film are phenomenal. I think the last hour is good. And overall, that makes for a pretty decent, satisfying theater experience. It's not too long. It's an hour 45. And I think that, whoever you are, parent, kid, grandparent, whatever age demographic you are, I think that you will enjoy the film. I don't think that there's a lot in here not to enjoy, and I'm very happy about that. We do harken back to the days of Coco and Inside Out, and I even think Soul didn't quite get there. Up, Monsters Inc., Ratatouille. We're hoping for some of those level caliber films in the future. Some people thought Turning Red was that. I personally didn't. Some people thought Soul was that. I thought it got very close, but not quite. And this movie didn't quite get there. The next movie up is a film called Elemental, so we'll see about that one. I'm not entirely sure about it, but you never know. Pixar is capable. Pixar is very capable, and so we will see about that. Obviously, by the way, just to cap off this review, there were 3 post-credit scenes. 2 of them were jokes, but the third one, is Zurg Survives, and just to say that if they made a Lightyear 2, I would see it, but I wouldn't be all that excited for it. I think that this story wraps up fine, and I don't think we need to revisit it at all. But maybe this was just them saying we want to revisit it, or maybe it's just them putting it there just in case. I don't know, but that is that. Let's talk about Miss Marvel episode 3, and not to bury the lead, but I love this show. I don't think that any MCU show, I'm thinking back to WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, and Moon Knight. I don't believe I'm missing one, right? WandaVision, Falcon, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight. Yeah, Miss Marvel. This is easily the strongest first 3 episodes. I think that from episode 1 to episode 3, the quality varies very minimally. Sort of the regression, if there is any, or even the progression. I think that the deviation between the episodes is so minimal, and I am just loving this show. As I mentioned in last week's review, this show really reminds me of one of my favorite sitcoms, Kim's Convenience on Netflix, a Canadian show about a Canadian-Korean family who has a convenience store starring Simu Liu. Go watch it. It's on Netflix. It's amazing. If you're enjoying this show, you will enjoy Kim's Convenience. But anyways, this show is phenomenal because of the way that it treats its characters and treats its story. This is, for the first time, I think we have a show by episode 3, by the halfway point, where we actually kind of feel like it's the halfway point, because we have our central conflict established, we have our central characters established, we have their motivations, we have their interpersonal relationships, and all of that has been beautifully set up in 3 episodes, unlike Moon Knight, which was, trying intentionally to confuse you for the first 3 episodes, and it did, and, I think that show works better. That format, rather, works better of confusing you in the mystery if the show is longer. I think WandaVision was longer, and that's why it worked a little bit better. The first 3 episodes were a very slow build, obviously, to the mystery of episode 4 being revealed. The first 3 episodes of Loki were a little frantic. First 2 episodes were great. Episode 3 I really dislike. I don't even remember Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Don't even ask me to remember what happens in each episode. It's just a blur. Sam becomes Captain America. That's, that's what and also the great political sort of discourse in the show as well. But other than that, I mean, the first 3 episodes of Hawkeye were just fun. They were cute, but there was nothing really there. But this show, it just is unparalleled, at least for the MCU so far, of how it cares about its culture, showing this Muslim culture that many of us might be unfamiliar with, and giving it such reverence to the family, to the culture, to the history, tradition. This wedding, by the way, it was just awesome. It's just so great to be able to see this kind of stuff, and you saw it again with Shang-Chi, in China. You saw it a little bit in Moon Knight with Egypt, and I think Marvel delving into different cultures, I just think is awesome. I think it's great. I think this is the kind of stuff that makes it feel original and fresh still, that this is not just Marvel doing Marvel-y things. This is Marvel delving into a family sitcom in the vein of Kim's Convenience, which is, it's spectacular. It's fantastic. Now, what we do get in this episode is sort of the beginning of the central conflict here. And I think this is a perfect time to introduce it, because obviously we have three full episodes to really resolve it. Unlike other Disney Plus Marvel shows that don't really give it enough time to resolve. And so obviously the Bengal is the MacGuffin. And we have these characters called the Clandestines, who are jinn, and they're ghosts, basically. It's kind of unclear. I'm not familiar with the actual mythology or history, rather a tradition of the jinn. So what I was hearing in the show was all new to me, which was really fascinating to hear about. But I don't know if there's more here that might come up. Like, these are, some interdimensional multiverse things. I don't know. I obviously not in real life, but, tying into the MCU, like, are these these people part of the multiverse or whatever? I mean, if you noticed also, by the way, I'll skip ahead to here. These are the 10 rings. I think giving further indication that the Bengal and the 10 rings are somehow interlocked. I think Shang-Chi makes logical sense to kind of, I think Wong maybe will kind of get, catch wind of this. That might be a prediction. Maybe I'll make a prediction here, put it on the record, that maybe Wong will find out about Kamala Khan and the Bengal, and will contact Captain Marvel like he did at the end of Shang-Chi. So we'll see about that. I think that actually might be a fun prediction. But anyways, yeah, I think that this idea of returning home, it's almost like the reverse. I was thinking about Spider-Man No Way Home. The idea of returning the villains home is sort of the reverse, because Kamala's like, wait, I don't want to do this because it might be dangerous, and I don't even know these people that well. But the clandestines, or whatever we're going to call them, these people are hell-bent on getting back to their dimension. And there's mystery here with obviously Kamala's grandmother, or great-grandmother rather, I think. I believe, yeah, great-grandmother. There's some history there as well. You see that opening flashback in this location here, where it seems like they're on good terms, but then it's revealed they're not, and there's a lot of really fun intrigue going on here. And obviously, it's set up to be like, hey, we're gonna be nice to you at first. I don't remember the character's name. I don't know if she's mentioned. I'm just gonna say Kamran's mom for now. Is talking here to Kamala and being like, hey, we want to help you. You want to help us. You have the Bengal. Let's all help each other. And Kamala's like, yeah, sure. But obviously, they get impatient, which is why they crash the wedding, and you see her powers here. And yeah, I think again that if this show for the first time in the MCU doesn't feel overstuffed yet. Obviously, by the time we get to the episode 5 and we're waiting for episode 6, we might go, yeah, there's too many things going on here, and that's entirely possible. That being said, I don't feel that with this show yet, and that's rare, because by the time I get to episode 3 of Moon Knight, I'm like, oh, there's so many things going on. There's the third personality. Here, I think straightforward is better. I think the idea that we're trying to, the villains want to go home. It's a good motivation. They're pretty brutal though, and I don't know if it's not for no apparent reason necessarily, but they're pretty brutal. Speaking of brutal, by the way, that's a good segue. If I have a picture here, I don't have a picture other than here. Bruno, I can't get enough of this guy. If you guys have seen Kim's Convenience, you'll know the character of Gerald. He reminds me so much of Gerald, but obviously much smarter. But they both play that kind of same goofy side character that's always kind of being picked on in a funny way. but is in love with the main protagonist. And I love this character. This is Marvel knows for the most part how to make really good companion characters. I'm not going to say side characters because these characters are very important to the main characters. So you have your Ned Leeds and your MJ Watsons and your Nakias and your Brunos, and I mean they just know how to realize rather these characters so well in this show, and I really appreciate that. I really love that about this show. Obviously, we get to see a little bit more of her powers. I think this was cool. I think the CGI looked a little better here than it did in episodes 1 and 2 because it was a little more flashy rather than kind of lingering on this. This looks fine in a picture. It didn't look amazing in the actual show, but again, I think the little flashes of the light, it works well. Now obviously here's this, we get the hint of the mask, and she's going to make her own costume, probably out of traditional clothing that they have from the family is my guess. That would be cool, kind of an integration of superhero costume and superpowers and her family heritage. I don't know enough about the comics to know if that's exactly what happens or anything like that, but I'm just guessing. And the last thing I wanted to say, I don't have it pictured here, but there are 2 scenes in this show, or in this episode, that show that the show is really caring about its characters and the relationships that they have with one another. And it's a scene with Kamala and her mother in the bathroom. That scene was really touching, where she's talking about her family history, the mother, and where Kamala kind of asks her if there ever was a mountain that she couldn't, overcome, a hurdle. And I thought that scene was great. And I thought the scene with the father and the brother, conversely, was also really great. Just the idea of we choose our family first and we don't worry about these things later because you chose love. And, things will sort themselves out in the end. I think those scenes are just so amazing. So, because they really humanize the characters, and I just give a depth to them that we didn't really have in any other. I hate to keep saying in any other MCU show, but this is the 5th one. Or 6th one, and frankly, there's been too many. It's 6 in a year and a half, and that's crazy. But again, I'm count me pleasantly surprised, because at this rate, and I say this all the time, I say, well, after Moon Knight's episode 1 and 2, at this rate, it's going to be the best MCU show. You can watch my Loki reviews. After I saw episode 2, I said this is the greatest MCU show. I'm becoming a little bit wary of saying that, but I will say that so far I am loving the show, and I can't wait for the next episode. I saw this before the Obi-Wan episode, knowing that the Obi-Wan episode would be longer and would be the finale, but I walked into the Obi-Wan episode lingering with that happiness that this show really brings. So I am very much excited and very much looking forward to the rest of this show. I'm just so happy with it. So I wish it was longer. I wish it was a 20-episode sitcom with superpowers. That would just be amazing. But alas, it's the MCU. So let's talk about Obi-Wan. Let's talk about the finale. So for those of you who have been following the reviews, and for those of you who haven't been, just to recap very briefly, obviously, just like with everyone else, this has been one of my most anticipated MCU Star Wars properties in a long time. I was looking forward to it immensely. Ewan McGregor is amazing. But what I had always said from the very beginning is that this is a show that's tricky, because the fates of every single important character except for basically Reva. Obi-Wan's going to survive. Darth Vader's going to survive. Luke Skywalker, Leia is going to survive. Bail Organa is going to survive. Owen and Beru are going to survive. The Grand Inquisitor is going to survive. That was a little bit of a surprise, and because of that, I think fans got kind of upset because the Grand Inquisitor has to survive. And it's a show that is weird because it's balanced on stakes of the confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan that you eventually know the outcome of. Obi-Wan has to win the fight, because in episode 4, unless you want to break canon, in which case that's even worse for you. I rewatched the clip, by the way, right before I started recording this episode 4. When I last saw you, I was the learner. Now I am the master. And yeah, I mean, they adhered to canon. Darth Vader got beat, squarely beat. We'll talk about some of my gripes with this episode in a little bit with the series as a whole, but just to say that they adhered to canon. He got beat. So you're kind of in this tricky situation of where there are, I'm not going to say no stakes, but what this show had to do, rather than have elevated stakes like a show like Stranger Things, where I'm heading into volume 2 like fearing for my own mental well-being if and when Steve Harrington dies, or if, I don't know, Nancy dies, or one of the characters, because I God forbid, that I'm just going to be devastated. But that's not happening with this show. And it, based on the premise of the show, it's not what it was intended to do, obviously. What the show had to do, right? Because there are no actual stakes in the characters' lives, at least, is to deepen the characters' psyches and deepen the characters' characterizations, for lack of a better word, motivations and personal histories. And we'll talk about this with Vader, but I think that the show half succeeded and half didn't, in an interesting way, a number of ways. And we'll talk about what I think about the series as a whole in just a little bit. But let's get into the deep dive of this episode, and then we'll wrap up with my thoughts on the series as a whole. So, this is just a great shot. I mean, the duel is the majority of the episode. Well, no, not the majority. It is the if the episode had a title, it could have been called The Duel. I know there was a Star Wars Visions episode called The Duel, which was pretty cool. But this episode could have been called The Duel. And jumping ahead a little bit, I just wanted to put this picture up front because I thought it looked so awesome. It's just Obi-Wan at his full strength again as a Jedi. Defeating Darth Vader using the Force, using his lightsaber, and using all of that sadness and regret and remorse that he has in him, while Vader is using all the anger and hatred that he has for Obi-Wan. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. We get to see the realization of Obi-Wan again as a Jedi Master, obviously using his traditional poses and stances, which is great. I have these, for whatever reason, I have all the Obi-Wan pictures out of order. Obviously, we can get to the Emperor in a second, but well, actually, I don't. Yeah, they're all out of order. I realize now. So where is it? Let's talk about. Yeah, we can talk about. Sorry, I mean, this is just another great picture of the duel here. But we can talk about. Yeah, we can talk about this. So, jumping in, I don't have many pictures from the Tatooine segment because I just. Quite frankly, that was the part of the episode that took me out of it every time. It's really hard because I just rewatched the prequels actually very recently. In fact, I actually finished up Revenge of the Sith right before watching this episode, which I thought would help me a little bit. It helped me in the sense of context, but it also actually on the flip side kind of gave me an adverse comparison to compare the show with, both what the prequels did better with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and obviously what Obi-Wan did better than the prequels did. But I will say that, the final half hour of Revenge of the Sith is Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda Palpatine. And unlike this show, obviously while Obi-Wan Anakin is the main focus of that, of the last half hour, Yoda and Palpatine is equally as important. And so cutting back and forth to it, you never feel like you're losing anything by jumping back and forth. That's the danger of cutting away from these kinds of things. Like if you can imagine Captain America Civil War's airport fight, just cutting back and forth with some, I don't know what it would be, but you know what I mean? It's hard, like cutting back and forth with Sharon Carter on a phone call with somebody, it's like, it doesn't work. And so, I don't want to talk too much about Reva because honestly, I want to focus on the good things. Not that Reva was bad in this episode at all. I think Moses Ingram gave the best performance that she had in the entire series thus far, and I think that she did what she could with the character. I'm going to reiterate it every single time I talk about the character. Please do not be hateful towards the actress. If you dislike the performance, I think that's fine. But please be respectful about it. And obviously not to make hateful comments about, the actress herself. That is out of line. Anyways. So, yeah, I think that, again, it's hard because, and I watched the episode very late at night, early in the morning. And there are just continuity things like Reva coming in with a lightsaber and Luke obviously kind of having that surprise and wonder when he picks up the lightsaber for the first time. Although I'm pretty sure Luke's eyes were closed. That might be the loophole they went with. I wasn't entirely sure. I'm gonna jump away from this picture because it's kind of creepy. I realize that you guys have been looking at that for a while. Let's jump back here. So there's that. But yeah, I think that it. I think that part of the episode was banking on the fact that we cared about the Reva character more than we actually do, and I think that only works if you have a build-up like Emperor and Yoda. Those are the two most powerful Force users on either side going at it, and it's intense. And so I think that scene works. I think that again, Moses Ingram delivers a fantastic performance as Reva. Really diving into the emotionality of the character and her becoming kind of like Anakin. I thought that was great. It didn't really belong in this show because this show didn't really establish her character like that. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's get back to the good stuff. Let's get back to the duel. So obviously you have Vader and Obi-Wan, and Vader's just going at Obi-Wan, and he's burying him under rocks, and I really like that, that whole mini flashback thing and flash forward thing where he's, seeing the memories or hearing the memories of Anakin, but also, that's the past, right? But he sees the future as well, Luke and Leia, and I think that that's a really great bridging of canon. I think that canon, for the most part, we were kind of worried. I have a couple things that I go, you didn't fit great in canon. Just by proxy of doing an Obi-Wan show facing Darth Vader in between 3 and 4, it just didn't really make some sense. We'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, I think they adhered to canon fine. I think that it's hard because obviously the visual style of the original trilogy, the lightsaber fights were much more just kind of poking at each other with glowy sticks. And you don't even see things getting cut off until episode 5. Just Vader kind of taps Obi-Wan on the side of the cloak and he disappears. So to see Obi-Wan, do this earlier, obviously he's an older man in episode 4, but it's kind of like, oh, well, you had that in you the whole time. And to see Vader just choking people by flicking, them with his wrist, and seeing him in Rogue One 5 minutes before A New Hope, it's kind of like, oh, so you guys, we're just retconning the fact that it's like, they just lose this ability all of a sudden. It's kind of something you have to go with. I'm not too bothered by it, but it's still just something to note. The other thing I wanted to talk about, though, and my other biggest, other than the whole Tatooine stuff, that I didn't like about this particular episode, not the series as a whole, this particular episode was this part, actually. Look, I think that this concept is brilliant, right? You cut off half the mask, you see the face behind it, and you have Hayden Christensen delivering dialogue that is emotional. I killed Anakin Skywalker. That's great, because in episode 4, Obi-Wan tells Luke that your father was killed by a Sith Lord named Darth Vader or whatever. That's great. I'm not going to say it's not great. And I understand if everybody has, that everybody has a completely different experience with this, with art. Another, really cool shot. But this scene was a carbon copy of Rebels. And I'm not going to lie to you, because, and this is important to me. I promise you, I'm not trying to just nitpick. I promise you this is important. When I was watching this episode, and when this happened, immediately I was brought back to this scene in Rebels, and immediately it took me out of this show, because this is exactly, almost line by line, the same scene in Rebels. I'm not even kidding. Like, there's a moment where Ahsoka goes, my master is dead or something, and Obi-Wan goes, my friend is dead, and Ahsoka says, I will avenge him or whatever, and on the one hand, it works because it works. It's like, look at this, right? Like, look at this. On the other hand, it's frustrating because it almost feels like they couldn't think of anything better to do. And I know that the mask cutting, it's something you kind of have to do, and it works. It's great. But it was at this moment that I kind of started wondering to myself, why am I not feeling as emotional as I do when I watch this scene? Because trust me, I don't like Rebels, by the way. I don't like Rebels as a show. We can talk about that in another point because anyways. But there are scenes and there are episodes and there are moments and characters in Rebels that are just fantastic, like Clone Wars level fantastic, and this is one of them. This scene between Ahsoka and Vader is one of the best scenes in Star Wars history, and every time I watch it, every time I hear, I see Ahsoka cutting off the part of the mask and falling to the ground, and Vader start wheezing, and Ahsoka turns around, and Vader says, Ahsoka. But it's Matt Lanter, it's Hayden Christensen, or not Hayden, it's Anakin Skywalker saying Ahsoka. And they're just looking at it. I tear up. Because this is the buildup of these two characters culminating in this moment. And that is exactly what this should have been. And it wasn't. And I don't know why. And frankly, I think it's because this is what the show was. It was a fun moment. But a moment is not a moment, or it's not emotional without things to build up towards it. And frankly, what I think the problem with Star Wars and Marvel so far in their TV shows, other than Miss Marvel, which I just talked about, is that the MCU and Star Wars shows on Disney Plus have been a series of moments. Fun. You can go on YouTube and watch awesome clips from all the shows, whether it be Loki and Mobius in their conversations, and Loki at the TVA, or whether it be Sam Wilson with Isaiah Bradley and Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes versus U.S. Agent, or whether it be White Vision and Vision talking, and the wonderful "What Is Grief" line and scene, or whether it be Rogers the Musical. These shows have moments, but other than really WandaVision and Miss Marvel so far, and again, I'm gonna include The Mandalorian in that. I don't think The Mandalorian is as good as a lot of people think it is, in my opinion. Obviously, it's not an indictment on any of your opinions. I know that everybody loves The Mandalorian. I am in the minority. I don't think it's bad by any means. I actually just started watching a show called Supernatural, which I'm really enjoying so far. That show is a very similar structure. I'm not going to go on too big of a tangent on The Mandalorian, but just to say that the Supernatural, each episode is its own thing. It's its own contained story, actually, almost like Goosebumps in a sense. But every episode, you are reminded of the overall story, and you are making progress towards it. There are entire episodes of Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 that I can just cut out because they're just side adventures. They're like a 35-minute, not YouTube video, but like a day in the life with Mando and Grogu. And that's frustrating to me. It really is. I'm not saying that Obi-Wan is the same. Obi-Wan had a story, but I don't think it focused on the right parts of the story. I think that the Reva part was just too much. I think the Leia part, while I love the actress who plays Leia, I think she was just so great, especially towards the end. She needed to be done by episode 2, episode 3 even. I do love the emotional moment though. I teared up a little bit when Obi-Wan was telling Leia about Anakin and Padme. And I teared up a little bit because that was built up in this show, and that's what this show wanted to be. It wanted to be mostly actually Obi-Wan and Leia, not Obi-Wan and Vader. But I think that if the entire show had been Obi-Wan and Vader and Clone Wars flashback, I'm not saying that it had to have Clone Wars flashbacks, obviously, but, just for example, Clone Wars flashbacks to where they were brothers, and that by the time you get to this duel and this moment, this moment, that it should have honestly made me weepy. Like this one did. This one did. And it didn't. And that's really unfortunate. So again, I'm not knocking this final episode, but I think this final episode is emblematic of the series as a whole. That, this series is a great series of moments with these characters. I'm always gonna, enjoy watching the Obi-Wan Vader stuff from episode 3 of this series, part 3, I should say, not episode 3, because that gets confusing with Star Wars. I get it. I'm always going to enjoy watching Vader pull out an entire ship with the Force. I'm always going to enjoy Vader and Obi-Wan's duel at the end. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. Although, not to get too nitpicky here, there was a lot of shaky cam here, which kind of bothered me, especially after having watched the prequels right away, because it kind of really felt like TV budget versus movie budget, where even though the prequel fights were so over choreographed and almost like dancing, At least the camera angles were wide and they were steady for the most part. It's a nitpick. I know it's a nitpick, but anyways. But again, this show is a series of moments in the life of the character between episodes 3 and 4. And to be honest, I don't know how to feel about this show. I don't think it's bad at all. But I think that at the end of the day, it had a problem focusing on a story. I think Deborah Chow did a good job. I think Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, Moses Ingram, Rupert Friend, who else? Vivian Lyra Blair. I think they all did a great job. But I think the story was just a little unfocused. And I'm sure it was a blast to film this series because obviously Ewan McGregor is stepping back into the role. And I hope he comes back if the rumored Cal Kestis series is true. Maybe he'll come back for a little bit. Obi-Wan Season 2, I won't be super excited, but if they have a story, fine, do whatever. Qui-Gon, we'll get to Qui-Gon in a second, but it's just a little disappointing when you have a show that is so unfocused in its story, when you have other shows like The Boys, like Stranger Things, which is just incredible, like Supernatural like these shows do it so well and so much better. Even The Office, a sitcom. Each episode is its own individual story, but there's an overall story. There's, Dunder Mifflin and Paper and, Ryan, the rise and fall of Ryan and Michael Scott and all these sorts of things. So, yeah, I'm a little frustrated, I'm a little disappointed, but overall, I really enjoyed the finale. And I will say, we'll talk about a couple last things here before we close out this episode. We'll talk about Qui-Gon. We'll talk about the Emperor next. But I will say that this is probably the best individual Disney Plus finale, as in you look at just the individual strengths of each of the finales as their own episodes. WandaVision episode 9 wasn't fantastic. It had its great moments. It wasn't fantastic. Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 6 wasn't great in my opinion. Loki episode 6 was pretty bad in my opinion, honestly. I know that varies from person to person, especially contingent on Kang, which is fine. Hawkeye episode 6 was kind of bizarre, with Kingpin especially, and Moon Knight episode 6 was a little lackluster for me. So, and obviously, I should say this also has to stack up with Mandalorian season 2 finale, which was really fun, really fantastic. Mandalorian season 1 finale was pretty good. Book of Boba Fett finale was weird. I don't know what it was. So I think that overall, on an individual episode basis, this was probably the best Disney Plus Star Wars Marvel finale that they've done. It's not a high bar, but I think it does hit it and it clears it, so I will commend the show for that. In terms of just integrating with the entire season as a whole, I think Mandalorian obviously does it better in season 2. I think in season 1, I think WandaVision does it better, but still, I will give it props for that. This scene was cool. It's kind of jarring again, just having seen episode 3 right before this, that Palpatine is so hideously disfigured, and then in episode 6 he's kind of just like a weird, like, haggard man with pale skin. So this was kind of more towards that. It kind of looks like just Ian McDiarmid, honestly. I wish they kind of did a little bit more. I don't know if he filmed this at home or did something like that, but it was cool. I think it kind of gave some closure as to, like, Vader going, yeah, okay, I won't hunt Obi-Wan down anymore. That's part of canon breaking that I kind of go, that's probably one of the biggest pieces of canon breaking that I go, it makes little to no sense that over the next 10 years, Vader knows that Obi-Wan, a Jedi, by the way, not just his mentor, but a Jedi is out there, potentially cultivating an army to fight against the Empire is out there, and they don't go after him, is bizarre. I also think that one of the other things to note about this show that I found very frustrating was that everybody left everyone for dead, when they clearly weren't. Episode 2. Reva leaves the Grand Inquisitor for dead. He's not. Is it episode 5 that they leave Reva for dead, and she's not. And then in episode 6, Obi-Wan leaves. He doesn't leave Darth Vader for dead, but he leaves Darth Vader without finishing him off. And as brutal as that might sound, this is the most evil man in the galaxy next to the Emperor. And by leaving him alive, I'm not saying that the Empire automatically crumbles, but I'm saying that things are better, maybe. So I don't quite understand. They never gave a good reason for why all of these characters just decided, I'm not gonna check that they're actually dead. I'm just gonna leave. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I think also even in this duel, Darth Vader leaves Obi-Wan for dead, in the rubble, and then he comes right back. So anyways, seems like a nitpick. I don't think it is, but at this point, whatever. The hello there was fun. I think that's great because obviously it's established in A New Hope that Luke and Obi-Wan know each other vaguely, and that's cool. I like that. Yeah, and just to wrap up with a couple last things, here's Qui-Gon again. That was cool. Kind of seems like they were setting up for a season 2 with this because he shows up at the last second and he's like, we have work to do. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I wonder if this series might have been better if it was animated. I wonder. I don't know that. Just a thought. Maybe if season 2 was animated, they're not going to do that. But anyways. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is just how, I watched this scene again right after. And it, for the most part, it lined up with canon. So I'm happy that canon mostly lines up still. I hate getting to that point where I'm just going to say that canon doesn't matter anymore. I'm getting to that point with the MCU unless they have some big time line and dimension and gods in the MCU explainer with all these, the Kamala Khan newer dimension and Moon Knight's Duat and Bastet and now Gore hopefully is going to tie these things together somewhat, but canon is canon and it should be adhered to no matter how bad the movies are or how good they are. And I'm glad it did. So yeah, Obi-Wan overall, I'm mildly disappointed. I have some great scenes to watch on YouTube again every once in a while, like I do when I get distracted with work, which is fun. And other than that, we'll move on to Andor. I'm hoping Andor is great. It's 12 episodes, thank God, and it's 2 seasons, thank God, which means that they hopefully have a plan. And they don't pull Loki where it's just a cliffhanger because they know they have season 2 coming. But yeah. That is about it for Obi-Wan. And that is about it for the Access Blockbusters Pod, episode 15. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoy doing these episodes because it just gives me a chance to talk about things that I want to, I've seen in the last week and I've heard and I want to talk about with you guys sooner rather than later. It's been busy because we have all these shows coming up, but now that Obi-Wan is done, and I don't think there will be a new movie that I'm going to see this week. So next week's episode, the only review, it should be Ms. Marvel episode 4. And we'll hopefully have other things to talk about in the meantime. Obviously, Thor reactions will come out this week. I think the premiere is tomorrow, which is exciting. Stranger Things Volume 2 is coming out next week, obviously after episode 16 of the podcast. So episode 17, hopefully I'll be done by then. I'm looking forward to it. Umbrella Academy, I'm hopefully going to be done by then as well. And yeah, that'll do it, guys. If you enjoyed the podcasts, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you're enjoying the clips as well. The format in general, if you want me to change anything, I'd be more than happy to. Give this video a like on YouTube, give it a rating on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and without further ado, that'll be it from me, from the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel and the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys in the next one.